All right, so I'm back with composer Kurt Feldman. He did the soundtrack for Demonschool, that awesome soundtrack we've been listening to. Oh, thank you for coming on. I'm stoked that you were willing to do this. I'm a very small creator, so being able to get somebody involved with the game on stream with me was really exciting. So I'm thankful for that. So why don't you start out and just tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, what you do. Obviously video game soundtracks, but I mentioned that you've also released a couple solo albums under the name Ice Choir. I know you've also got Winter Station and all that. Could you repeat yourself? I had you muted. I do apologize. We're all good to go now.
Yeah, no problem. Hello everyone, I'm Kurt Feldman. I'm a composer and musician. Thank you again, Anthony, for having me. I don't know if the chat caught that part or whatever, but yeah, I'm a composer, musician, sound designer, and I was responsible for all the music and sound design for Demonschool.
Yeah, so 37 tracks in almost 2 hours. That's a lot. As far as I know, that's probably like the biggest scope for a project I'm aware of you've worked on. So that's impressive. It's a lot of music, and it's very listenable on its own too, and available on his Bandcamp for a very reasonable $10. So if you like what you heard, support Kurt. Again, awesome independent musician. We're all about supporting independent musicians, artists, creators here on this channel. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to be involved in video game soundtracks and how you came to be the composer for Demonschool?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I started making music for games maybe, I don't know, like, I think 2010 was like probably when I first started doing it. That was, I kind of got started with it, like, I had a friend from high school who we kind of like reconnected after he had heard my old band at the time. And we started, like, he was into the music, and we kind of reconnected, and we collaborated on some like visualization software for that band. And then shortly after that, we kind of came up with the idea. I was like, hey, I have this idea for a game. You know, would you be interested in, you know, essentially just coding the game and doing all the hard work, and I'll like, you know, make the music for it and the sound design. So that was kind of my first foray into, you know, game sound design. Before that, I really, you know, I didn't have any like formal training with like sound design or whatever. You know, the band that I was playing with like had, you know, it was like loosely like an electronic band with some guitars and stuff. And yeah, there's some like light sequencing. So like all of the sound effects and game music for that are like pretty like 8-bit sounding and kind of simplistic. But yeah, that was like kind of where I started. And then actually a couple years later, we ended up doing a second game together, and that was like his game that, you know, he had been sort of working on for a while. It's kind of like an asynchronous sort of like bullet hell shooter. Both of these games, by the way, are for iOS. But that game was called Starlicker, and yeah, I also did the music and sound design for that, and that was like probably the first like more legit game that I actually worked on.
Cool. And as far as like
there's
how
been
you got
some other ones since then.
And so like, is that the same game designer on Demonschool then? Is that how you got drafted to do that, or like how'd you come into this project?
So, yeah, that's actually a different designer. So there was, yeah, a couple years after that, like, just coincidentally, I think, like, I was introduced to this guy, Brandon Sheffield, who is the director for Necrosoft, which is the studio behind Demonschool. He approached me in, like, I think I met him just through the internet, through, like, maybe in 2013, 2012, somewhere around there. He was just a fan of now the next band I played in after the first one I was talking about. Called Ice Choir. I think you mentioned it before. So he was just a fan of that music and was like, "Hey, do you make music for video games? Like, I feel like your music would kind of work for that." And I was like, "Actually, I have made a video game. I made a couple." So he was like, "Oh, cool." So yeah, we kind of developed a working relationship. I did one game for Necrosoft before this one, and that game was called Hyper Gunsport. Came out in like 2020. Or 2021, depending on if you remember the Google Stadia. Most people don't. It was originally released for Google Stadia in 2020 and then re-released in like 2021, 22 as Hyper Gunsport. So that was the last game I did, and then Demonschool is the one that just came out today.
Awesome. So I've been listening to the soundtrack a little bit ahead of this interview just for preparation, and like a couple of tracks that really stood out to me were like the Wednesday Battle action and the shopping one. I like those personally because they remind me a lot of your Ice Choir stuff. So I like those stuck out to me, but also the mansion and boss battle action theme I think are really, really awesome tracks that kind of encompass the aesthetic of the game, or at least what I think they were going for. Did you have any tracks on the soundtrack that you're particularly happy with how they turned out?
Yeah, I mean, overall it's like pretty happy with the whole thing. I mean, I think there was like maybe some tracks that I like pushed myself a little bit more on stylistically this time around, which like I think were more of a win for me. Definitely like the weekend tracks I think were the weekend. Well, one of them is a weekend track. One of them is like actually the cooking game track, cooking mini game. They're like the kind of chiller sort of like Bob James style things. Like I never really made any kind of 70s sort of like AOR kind of music like that to that degree at least. And I thought that was like an interesting challenge to sort of figure out. I'm not like a keyboard player, so like how do I like communicate these very like keyboard centric songs in a sort of like fake way that's passable as authentic. And I think I was sort of successful with those. A lot of cool string arrangements for that I was pretty happy with for those tracks. And then what's another one? I think the last like I don't want to spoil it, but it's like the final boss battle music. There's like a track on the soundtrack that's like almost 9 minutes long, and it's kind of like a 3-phase battle track, and I'm pretty happy with that one. It just kind of runs a lot of different sort of like 70s prog rock style within one sort of evolving piece, and yeah, I'm just pretty psyched about that one.
Yeah, that one is really good. I didn't want to throw it on the stream at all because it was the final boss battle theme, and I know that might be a little spoilery for some people, but the length and the evolution of that song from beginning to end definitely stood out.
Yeah, that was like a really interesting sort of challenge working on that track, because the director sort of like, he asked me, he's like, okay, so I would love to have a track that's like just really like focused around Oregon. Like, and he sent me some references that were like, like Shin Megami Tensei kind of stuff, and like obviously Castlevania 4 soundtrack has like a lot of that kind of like, just Oregon big reverb in a church kind of a thing. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, that music is like, to me, just sounds like kind of like Bach or something. And I don't really listen to classical music at all. So it was this sort of interesting challenge to kind of like just do a crash course in that kind of music and see if I could pull off making a song that sounded like that. And yeah, once again, I'm not like a keyboard player. I don't listen to classical music at all. So it was like very,
I mean, you're not.
It was a fun challenge to like,
there.
Yeah.
Just like write a quick fugue in a minor key, and you're like 90% of the way to a Castlevania sounding track. So
yeah, right.
So that kind of leads into my next question. You mentioned that Brandon has sent you over some reference tracks. So I was curious about how you go about writing a song. Like, how much do you know about the context it's going to be used in? Like, do they say this is for a boss battle? This, like, do you know what the boss looks like, or is it just like write me an epic boss battle theme that is like this song from Castlevania?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say like there were certain tracks where we knew where they were definitely going to go. We knew what like the vibe was going to be for that. And then there were some other ones where it's just like we need as much music as you can make. So like here's some references to kind of, and just go for it, So like, for example, the final boss battle, like we knew that was going to be this kind of like, when it goes into the planning phase, it's like very starkly different than some of the other ones. It's just like kind of organ by itself. and then like the rest of the music kind of swells in. So we knew that we wanted that to be this like kind of stark thing for that specific moment. But then there was some other parts where it was just like, oh, also like the weekend track, great example. Like we knew we wanted it to be very different there, kind of have like a totally different, kind of more fun, sort of laid back feel. But yeah, the rest of it, it's like where it's a little bit more just like kind of spooky or mysterious kind of music. I just was, you know, creating a ton of stuff, and I think one part of your question was what were like some of the references, right? Yeah, so definitely a lot of like the Italian kind of late 70s horror composers, like Lucio Fulci, that director. Definitely like Brandon sent me a bunch of stuff from his movies. You know, obviously the Goblin composer Claudio Simonetti. For me, I kind of had my own sort of proclivities that I wanted to like sort of impose upon the soundtrack as well. So he was like very cool about just like, okay, let's do this, but then like I also like have kind of my own vision of like late 70s music that I sort of want to capture for the soundtrack, and he was like very cool, just kind of, you know, arriving at something that was sort of like not just that, you know, not just like sort of like 70s horror film stuff, but something that had like a little bit more like funky kind of aspect to it, and there's a lot of sort of emphasis on like the rhythm section for all of this music, and that's mostly because like I'm like, I don't know, I don't really consider myself to like be really play like anything super well, but if I had to like pick one instrument that I was like decent at, I'd say probably like bass or drums. So there's like a heavy focus on all the music being very centered around like kind of the rhythm section, like drums super loud, bass like a focal point for all the music, melodically and also just like mix wise. So there was like, you know, that whole aspect, like, you know, making that a part of the, you know, part of the mix.
Cool. I've got just a couple more questions for you here, and then I can let you go. And that actually leads into my next one really well. Could you tell us just a little bit about like your workflow and how you created this? Like, what are we listening to when we hear this soundtrack? Is it all programmed? Is there any live instruments there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on the computer. That's the short answer. Yeah, I mean, I write everything like kind of at the same time. I would say like I have, you know, to start out a track, I'll kind of like generally have, you know, a bass patch open, just drums. In this case, for the most part, like there were like, it was kind of like a live kit thing. By the way, it's all the drums are like programmed. The bass is, some of it's programmed, and some of it's programmed how I would play it, and some of it is played by me like on the bass for certain songs. The reason why I didn't play all of the bass parts was because I was going for a very specific bass tone. I was like this for like 90% of this record, the tone I was going for was Alan Spencer on the Roxy Music song, Same Old Scene.
All right.
So like I was able to capture that with like a plugin. I don't have a Music Man bass. It's like a very specific tone, like through like a kind of like very specific sort of amp sound. And so like I was able to capture that, I think, pretty well, like using, you know, like some Contact library stuff, and that was like kind of like the main tone. And then I played some other bass parts. All the guitar is live. None of the drums are live except for the percussion stuff. I played all of the little like percussion accoutrements, and I did play all of the drum parts just on like a MIDI keyboard. But yeah, that's kind of how I did it. And then, you know, obviously there's a lot of rhythm box stuff for all like the planning phase stuff and some of like the story adventure mode things. Like there's a lot of that. A lot of like, you know, kind of late 70s rhythm box stuff, Ace Tone and etc. Echo. Yeah. CR78.
Cool. Yeah, I like hearing a little bit about how it's made. So yeah, again, I really thank you for joining me tonight on this. Your soundtrack is awesome. I'm enjoying the game, but the soundtrack just adds a lot to it. That's something that literally every reviewer that I've seen that has reviewed this game has made specific mention of your soundtrack and what it brings to the game. So you did a fantastic job. Is there anything that you'd like to plug tonight before I let you go? What do you got planned next, or any more soundtracks, more Ice Choir?
Yeah, I mean, right now, first off, thank you for saying that. That's very kind of you. And thank you, chat, for tuning in. I'm not on the stream right now, so I don't know who's here or if there's anyone here.
Yeah, we got about 10 viewers, 10 steady viewers.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. What do I have going next? I guess there's no like new soundtracks booked right now. I also have like a day job, so where I do sound design related stuff, but it's more like on the corporate side. So I do like app sound design and kind of like sound logo work, but that's like my main job. So I'm always going to be doing that. This project was like kind of like a weekend thing for me. So it'll be nice having the weekends back for a little bit. I'm doing like kind of mastering work. There is another Ice Choir record. I know you were asking about that. There's another Ice Choir record that I have mostly produced, written. I took a break from it for a while, obviously, just to like kind of finish this up. There's some other like not Ice Choir music I'm probably going to release before that. And then, there's another project I probably shouldn't talk about that's not really music. Really, it's not going to be an album or something, but it's like a music related thing that will be out pretty soon, I guess.
Oh yeah, well, very cool. It's all exciting stuff. And again, I love what I've heard of the soundtrack. And love what I've seen of the game, and I'm super, super appreciative of you joining me here for this tonight.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yep. All right. I will let you get out of here, Kurt.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a lot of fun talking to Kurt there. I thank everybody for joining me for this tonight. I'm a very small creator, so this is the most viewers I've ever had on Twitch at once. But this is the type of stuff I really wanted to do when I started my channel. So it was exciting to be able to get something like this done so early into it. If anybody would be so kind as to follow me here on Twitch, that would be a huge help. I also have a gaming YouTube channel. That's Anthony's Game Corner. The URL is youtube.com/@Anthony'sGameCorner. Again, any follows over there is the single biggest thing somebody can do to help a creator like me grow. I'm not going to bore you guys with any more of my talking at this point, any more of my streaming. I'm going to end it here on a good note. We all saw Kurt, and that's what we were here for. So thank y'all. I'm signing off.